This conference will now be recorded.
Thank you. Welcome to the City of Warrenville Public Safety and Finance Committee of the Whole meeting for July 27th, 2020. In accordance with our social distancing requirements, today's meeting will be held virtually and this meeting will be recorded. I'd like to have the roll call, please. Clerk?
Mayor Brumman. Mayor Brumman.
Here.
Alderman Ashore.
Here.
Alderman Berry.
Here.
Alderman Bevere.
There.
Alderman Davalos.
Here.
Chairman Goodman.
Here.
Alderman Crucial.
Here.
Alderman Widener.
Here.
Alderman Wilson. Alderman Wilson.
Come back.
I'll move on to staff. City Administrator Copeland.
Here.
Assistant City Administrator White.
Here.
Community and Economic Development.
Here.
Got it. Public Works Director Kugler.
Here.
Finance Director Dahlstrom.
Here.
Chief Toronto.
Here.
And Alderman Wilson.
Okay, Alderman Wilson, if you're trying to say that you're here, we can't hear you. I see that he's here. Maybe he'll be able to connect in a little while. Okay, he's disconnected. We'll try it again.
Alderman Wilson.
He's here. We were having trouble with the audio.
Thank you.
Can you hear us now?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. I'd like all of you to say it silently to yourself as I say the Pledge of Allegiance aloud. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with real liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The next section of our agenda is set aside for public comments. We will begin with anyone who is present at City Hall who is wishing to make a comment. Is there anyone present at City Hall?
Nope.
Okay, no one's present at City Hall. Now we will hear any verbal comments from the public who are participating by phone. So if there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak, now is the time. Please announce yourself with your name and address. Please speak slowly and clearly so that we can catch your information. And once we have everyone who wishes to speak identified, I will call on you one by one to proceed with your comments. Is anyone on the line? Okay, it does not seem that there's anyone on the line. I've been notified by staff that no emailed comments have arrived to be read aloud at this time. But I do want to let everyone know that once we conclude citizen comments at this time, there will not be another opportunity for the public to comment during this meeting. All right, thank you. Next, we'll go to officials and staff comments, starting with the mayor.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just one thing for this evening. Getting around town, it is a joy to see the effect of Warrenville in bloom and all of the people who have spent an enormous amount of time beautifying their yards. Warrenville is looking really, really good, and the signs are going out. I'm understanding that there may be as many as 200 signs going out to recognize folks who have done a terrific job in making Warrenville a beautiful place for the summertime. So thank you, Warrenville in Bloom, and thank you all the citizens who have taken the time and the effort to beautify their properties and make our community a more beautiful place for the summer.
Thank you, Mayor. Clerk, any comments?
Thank you. None, thank you.
Thank you. Treasurer, any comments?
No.
All right, thank you. Alderman, comments. We'll begin with Alderman Ashe.
No comment.
Thank you. Alderman Bevere.
No comment.
Thank you. Alderman Derry.
No comment.
Did you say Alderman Davalos?
I did.
Okay, I didn't hear that, but no comment.
All right, thank you. I guess I'm next. I have a few comments. First of all, the Fermilab Community Advisory Board met on Thursday. They had a wonderful announcement to make that on July 13th, they broke their own record for the strongest accelerator magnet ever made, 4.5 Tesla, which is amazing work. Groundbreaking science is going on there, so that's wonderful in our community. Secondly, I want to announce a drive-up voter registration event, which is going to be held on Sunday, August 2nd, from 1 to 5 p.m. at COD, which is at 425 Thaywell Boulevard in Glen Ellen. You can register to vote from the safety and convenience of your own car. All volunteers will have masks and observe social distancing requirements. The registrant must wear a mask, but if you don't have one, that's fine. One will be provided for you, and instructions will be provided to you at the event so that everything should go smoothly. Step-by-step information from the volunteer who will walk you through the process. So please, if you've moved or you need to register to vote, please take advantage of this safe and hopefully speedy opportunity. Last but not least, I want to acknowledge the ongoing pandemic. We have had 507 deaths in DuPage alone due to COVID-19. I want to extend our condolences to the family and friends of those individuals and say that we as a city remain committed to address this ongoing crisis. We want to work with and support our healthcare and community partners and thank the essential workers who put themselves in harm's way every day for us all. We show our respect for their sacrifices by doing whatever we can to slow the spread of the virus, wearing masks, washing hands, and watching our distance from others, the 3 W's that the County Health Department has asked us to stress. So please keep that in mind. Thank you very much for all that you're doing. It's a lot of sacrifice by a lot of people. All right. Next, Alderman Krishel.
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Next, Alderman Widener.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to, congratulate the Forest Preserve District of DuPage County for the fact that they were deleted as a national priority from the national priorities list as a Superfund fight. This comes after many decades of careful maintenance and care responsibilities on the Forest Preserve, and this was reported in last week's weekly report provided by the city administrator. So that's good news moving forward. The Forest Preserve will, of course, be responsible for the maintenance and monitoring of the site, and the Illinois EPA will also provide oversight into the matter. So that's good news. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Widener. Alderman Wilson.
No comment.
Thank you, Alderman Wilson. Next, let's see, the city administrator.
Thank you. A couple of quick things. I understand that a certain mayor, who will remain nameless, has a birthday this week. So since we've been announcing birthdays, we'll just wish him happy birthday this week, but we won't say whose name is. Secondly, Alderman Goodman, thank you very much. for reminding everyone about the COVID-19 precautions and the 3 Ws. Monday morning, again, I was on a call with the health department and just reading all the things that they're sending out. You're seeing, council seeing most of them that I forward. There is some increase even in DuPage County, not like the other states, but they have asked us, the county health department has asked all municipalities in DuPage County to remind our residents of those things. We need to continue to be cautious to protect health, save lives, and protect jobs and businesses, really, at the bottom line, too. It's about all of those things. And we need to continue being vigilant, being cautious. So I appreciate your highlighting those. We're all community leaders. I know there's not a lot of public here, but we need to continue to model those things. This is not an ascot around my neck. It is a mask that my neighbor made for us. Very, very crafty people in my neighborhood and in the community. And it works very well. I've been using it. It's washable, and I wear it all the time. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for setting an example. All right. Chief Turano, I know that there was a report from Merit, their annual report. Did you have any comment about that?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Two things, I'll be real brief. Number one, Warrenville was added to the list of 278 communities on the Illinois Chiefs of Police Association website, which have adopted the 10 shared principles in law enforcement. And to synopsize real briefly, it basically has to do with providing unbiased, top shelf public service to all members and citizens that we come in contact with, regard of religion, race, creed, and what have you, that we adhere to the highest standards of training and continued professional education in law enforcement, and that we value the sanctity of human life, and that the use of deadly force is only employed as an absolute last resort in certain very specialized cases. And secondly is I emailed out to all elected officials as well as the administrator and assistant administrator the first annual merit report for 2019 to 2020. This will cover 9 months of work completed by Merit, and that stands for the Metropolitan Emergency Response and Investigation Team of DuPage County. This would be from August 1st of 2019 when Merit became operational until April 30th. From then on, we will operate on our fiscal year of May 1 to April 30. Basically, if you read through it, and I think you find it interesting, it lists our mission and policy statement, as well as the operational components which make up Merit, which is Special Weapons and Tactics, Major Crimes, Public Integrity Unit, Major Crash Reconstruction, Crime Scene Investigation, Digital Forensic Investigation, Crisis Negotiations, Canine Response, Incident Management Assistance Team, and Planned Events. During the year, we have had 71 call-outs in Merit so far this year. It gives a breakdown by pie chart. The most used has been the Major Crash Reconstruction Team with 23 incidents, followed by Digital Forensics with 15, Forensic Investigation Unit with 11, and so on and so forth. It'll also show the number of activations by agency for Merit, as well as the participation totals of the number of officers of each agency that are participating in Merit. Warrenville currently has 7, and I'm very proud to say that 2 of our forensic investigation unit people have been recognized as really the top of their craft in DuPage County law enforcement, and that's Detective Adam Catt and Officer Cassandra McCurris. They've worked on a number of major incidents that you would probably only see if you work for a very large metropolitan police department. So they're gaining a valuable experience and they have gotten a tremendous amount of ability to be able to put those into practice. It gives you a breakdown in the report of all of the different sections, the amount of call-outs, the number of personnel hours that have been expended during those call-outs. And so far, it has been very, very successful. We've got 3 active investigations we're working right now, one being a homicide in Roselle, number 2 being a homicide in Lombard, and number 3 being an aggravated battery with a firearm in Bensonville. But so far, I think Merit has been a real asset to DuPage County law enforcement and to our citizens. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to try and answer those for you.
Thank you, Chief. Are there any officials that have any questions? All right, I'm not hearing anyone asking to speak. Thank you, Chief. We'll go on to the rest of the staff. Director Menser, any comments?
No comments.
Thank you. Deputy Director Kukler.
No comments.
Thank you. Director Dahlstrand.
No comments tonight, Madam Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. And the city attorney is not present tonight. Okay. Moving on to the business of the meeting. Our first item tonight is a presentation, informational only, by the DuPage Convention and Visitors Bureau. They will be presenting on COVID-19 impact on the local hospitality industry. Director Menser will present this item.
Just a good evening and just a brief introduction. So the council's been receiving monthly financial updates from the finance department, and as a follow-up to some of the discussion and specific recommendations made by the city council, we reached out to the executive director of the DCVB, Beth Marchetti, and asked if she'd be willing to participate in one of the committee of the whole meetings to share with the council her assessment of really the impacts that have occurred on the local hospitality industry as a result of COVID-19, kind of where we're right at this point in time, and then to identify what steps and actions the DCVB is taking at this point in time to help address those issues and provide a little bit of a look out into the future of what we might expect from hotel occupancy going forward. It's also my understanding that the general manager of the Warrenville Hyatt House and Hyatt Place facilities, Sharon Espino, is with us tonight, and should be able to answer any questions about actually what's happening kind of on the front lines in Warrenville.
Thank you very much, Ron. I appreciate it. Everyone can hear me okay?
Yes, Beth, thank you.
Good. Thank you very much, Madam Chair, Mayor Brummel, and to the City Council and City of Warrenville staff for having us tonight. As Mr. Menser said, we have Sharon Espino. Sharon and I go way back. If you get into the hospitality industry, you somehow can't leave. So we've known each other for many, many years. So you are very lucky to have Sharon in the City of Warrenville now. Again, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Beth Marchetti. I've been the executive director and have the privilege of serving for the last 6 years. And I'm delighted that Alderman Widener has been on our board, and currently we have Mayor Brummel serving on our board of directors. So thank you. On behalf of the 23,000 employees in hospitality pre-COVID, thank you for this opportunity. Tourism is a $2.7 billion industry for DuPage County alone. We are not a tourism destination per se, but what we do is bring a lot of visitors, over almost 4 million, to our hotels each year. So if you will give me just a second, we will start sharing my screen, and Sharon will be at the end of the presentation, so we'll try to go pretty quickly here. Let's see. All right. Can you see that? Anyone? Are you able to view the screen?
No.
Okay, let's try again. Thank you. Boy, we had it the first time. How about now?
There we go.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much. Okay, so we are open for business. We have been. Our hotels are considered essential workers, our hoteliers, and so we will continue to fight the fight. We certainly realize that this pandemic has put a complete halt on many of the things that we're doing, but we will continue to move forward. As Mr. Menser mentioned, forward-looking is what we're planning on doing. So let's get started. Where travel stands right now. So as you can imagine, the situation changes every week, and even tomorrow, I believe Chicago Mayor Lightfoot will be mentioning a few more states added to the not safe state for Chicago. Now, what that means for us is a little bit different, but we have to continue looking at our surrounding states to see what the behavior is for those potential travelers. What has remained consistent is it's going to take a while for us to recover. But what we can do is continue to look right now what we can do for the summer in terms of sports, some wedding business, some reunion business, and then start to plan for future recovery. Are there guests staying in our hotels? Yes, there are, but they certainly aren't pre-COVID levels. We always look at consumer confidence. So while a few weeks ago, people were starting to plan for the summer, it is starting to take a little bit of a decline, and we'll show you that slide in just a few minutes. But the Midwest and DuPage County have a number of factors working in our favor. So if you look at this green line, that is the Midwest. So points of interest that people have a propensity to look at the Midwest for travel. And then while it is declining, it's still higher than the rest of the country. So we want to take as much opportunity to safely have people come to our hotels. And we are also working with the DuPage County Health Department, the Illinois Public Health Department, and we're going to go into that in just a few minutes as well. What another opportunity is for DuPage County is the 79.3% of the population lives within that brown area on your screen. So we have a huge amount of people that we can draw from when it's safe to do so. So this pie chart looks a little different, but what it means for Warrenville is a huge opportunity. So as you probably know, DuPage is a business destination. We book a lot of meetings and group business, but we have completely flip-flopped this pie chart where there is a bigger opportunity for leisure travel. And with Warrenville's Naturally Warrenville brand and the DuPage CVB's new brand, which is Do More DuPage, health and wellness, small town charm, getting out of the city is actually to our benefit now. So I think there's some really great opportunities, and your hotels are a perfect fit for that type of business. So many of you may have read in the Daily Herald 2 weeks ago that we are working in partnership with the health department and Choose DuPage to launch a Healthy DuPage promotion, which would include the 3 W's, watching your distance, wearing your mask, and washing your hands. And also to really talk about how we are all working in collaboration to restore confidence and also, quite frankly, to all be on the same page. So each brand of hotel varies by brand on their protocol, but what we really want to focus on is a unified message of that we're pledging to prevent the spread of COVID. So I think this is a really important campaign for us. Obviously, we'll be also pushing out overnight stays. So the health department, Karen Ayala and I have been talking about, it's still safer for visiting friends and family to stay in a hotel than it is in your own home. So those are some of the hyper local messages that we're pushing out to try to generate overnight stays in our wonderful hotels. Obviously, weddings and reunions, again, people are craving to see family, so we want to do it in a safe fashion. This is just a quick quote that, people really want to hear from their officials that it's safe to travel. And we're not going to say that until it's really able to do so, but we are going to say that, our locals can really be a traveler in their own backyard. This is just a sample of, on our website, we have all the, and sorry, Sharon, this isn't a Hyatt. We have Marriott's commitment to clean. So all of the different COVID resources are on our pages so that people know what to expect when they're arriving here. I think that's a Downers Grove slide, but that was just a sample that we grabbed really quickly. Priority number 2 is to make sure that we're relevant. So obviously suburban hotels will fare better than the city. We're already seeing other states, including if you've driven down the Eisenhower, that Kentucky's got a big billboard up. We're ready when you're ready. As I said before, small town charm will really be a part of our messaging when we launch this campaign with the health department. Again, we've talked about a lot of pools of visitors right in our own backyard. And then obviously, as Alderman Widener just mentioned about the Forest Preserve District, they're such a great partner with us and all of our trails and the downtown attractions and downtown districts that you can visit while you're on the trails. And obviously, we've been talking about sports, but we do have some great things that are still going on in DuPage. And Sharon might mention it a little bit, but the FMC Natatorium at Ty Warner Park is opening next month. This is a game changer for DuPage. It is a 25-meter, 50-meter, and diving well swimming pool that will now be able to host Olympic qualifying events. Right now, high school swim meets have to go to Pleasant Prairie, Wisconsin, or Indianapolis to hold our own Illinois meets. So this will now be able to be held in Illinois and right here in DuPage County. We actually pivoted and did a virtual site tour from the organizing groups out of Colorado Springs in April and did a virtual site tour, walked away with RFPs, requests for proposals, for next year's USA Swim Meets for synchronized swimming, which, by the way, is now called artistic swimming. When you watch the Olympics next time. Again, just such a great thing for us to have in DuPage, and will spread as far out as Warrenville to the hotels. This slide here, this is where we're really going to hit it. We're not going to hit, California or Texas or any of those destinations which are having troubles with the spread, but we are going to talk to friends and family right here in our own backyard. This is what the trusted sources are, so that we are talking to friends and family that we have great hotels. So please refer them to stay in our area. Obviously, state tourism sites are still at 46.6% credible sources for what people are trusting. The next slide talks about what people are trying to do for their summer travel. Obviously, dining, shopping, and relaxing, recreating on a lake or ocean or river. While we don't have oceans, we do have lakes and rivers, and we also have parks that we can talk about. And then even 30% are looking for hiking or bicycle rides, if you can find a bicycle. So really, we've been talking to area experts and our industry associations to make sure that we are front and center, making critical decisions based on data. And we are looking for the future, because the booking window for group business is still a year, 2, 3 years out. So we will continue to look ahead and try to work with our board of directors and talk about a plan for recovery. This was a great video that we did. I'm not going to show it because I really want Sharon to have the opportunity to talk for just a few minutes. I thank you for the opportunity. I really do want to thank the city for continuing to support their hotels and the restaurants, attractions, trails, and all the other things that are wonderful amenities to Warrenville. And we really do appreciate your support. So I'm going to get off here the screen and put Sharon back on here.
Sharon, I see you talking.
There you
How
go.
about now? Okay. Hello, my name is Sharon Espino. I joined the Warrenville community at the beginning of this year as the complex general manager of the Hyatt House in Hyatt Place. Thank you, Mayor Brummel and the City Council for your time today. It's a pleasure to meet all of you. I've been in the industry for over 25 years. 10 of those years were spent at the Courtyard Marriott Elmhurst, where I worked closely with the DuPage CVB. This is definitely a very challenging time to be in the hotel and travel industry. During this pandemic, we experienced the closure of one of our 2 hotels for over 2 months and laid off over 30 associates. We're grateful to have reopened back in May, but we're still struggling to increase staffing due to the lack of occupancy. We've seen an uptick in reservations, but mostly from local patrons looking for an escape from this continued pandemic. We have not seen the return of business travel, nor group segments that we rely heavily on for revenues. If there was ever a time we need the support of our hotel tax fund for tourism, it's now. We're counting on the continued support of the DuPage CVB as they are an extension of our sales team. We rely heavily on the CVB for dedicated sales leads for our hotel and the DuPage market. Expanded marketing and the benefits of being on the DuPage website. The return of our sports segment with exclusive access to booking tools for these teams. In closing, I wanted to express the importance of our continued support of hotel tax to be utilized for hotels, a return of tourism, and the support for the DuPage CVB. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Sharon. And I'm certainly happy to entertain, I'm sure Sharon is as well, since she has the front line of the hotel industry. So thank you again for the opportunity, though. Any questions?
Thank you. We'll go through the council alphabetically, starting with Alderman Asho.
No questions.
Thank you. Alderman Berry. Alderman Berry,
No question. Questions at this time.
Thank you. Alderman Bevere.
No questions at this time.
Yes, I would just like to ask one of the two of you if all of our hotels in Warrenville are open now, or just, I mean, are they all open?
Sharon, the last I checked, I think you were the one that reopened the last. So all 6, I think, are open at this time. Occupancy is very low. We are faring better than Chicago. They have been in the single digits. Luckily, June and hopefully July, we will see an uptick in the 30%, but it's very dire. But I think we will get a few more if things stabilize a little bit. But if the numbers keep going up, well, obviously we'll see that go down. So it's dire.
Thank you. The other question I had was just something I heard on the news tonight that I guess Chicago, I don't know if it's Illinois or Chicago, may flag Wisconsin in a couple of days, that you need to be quarantined for 14 days when you come back from Wisconsin. I guess there's no way to tell what that means for DuPage as far as that, but I guess that's what you were talking about at the beginning of your presentation. So I suppose we're all keeping track of that and just having to deal with it when it happens.
Thank you. So that one chart that I had with the states, Wisconsin is the #1 market for Chicago even. And so I was on the phone with David Whitaker from Choose Chicago. Obviously, McCormick Place is decimated. They did have a plan to safely hold up to 1,000 attendees and really tried to lobby to get that up and running and open and have some wiggle room with that. But obviously, safety is utmost important, and keeping everyone, keeping the pandemic at bay. So I think that's what you'll hear tomorrow is some more states being added to that list, Wisconsin being one of them.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Yes, if that's all on the tableau, then I'm next. I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't ask this question, so I apologize if it's a little bit unfair. I know that you're not a public health professional, and it is your job to promote tourism in DuPage. But as public officials, we're also trying to protect public health as well as wise oversight of tax dollars spent. So I read recently that the county allocated $1 million of the COVID relief funds to this advertising push. And I was wondering what your view was on whether it made more sense to give the money to the hotels and restaurants and places that are affected by the decline in tourism to pay their staff rather than to run ads that encourage travel right now.
I think you bring up a really valid point. We had talked about doing some sort of relief effort for the hotel staff. You have to remember, we have 16,000 hotel rooms, 115 hotels. It would be a little cumbersome to disseminate that. The restaurant business, I don't know if anybody watches the morning show on Sunday morning, but the restaurant business has more employees than the airlines and manufacturing combined. So we are not necessarily encouraging tourism, we're encouraging recovery of our economy. So by us getting out and safely patronizing our restaurants and patronizing outdoor spaces, it's helping drive tax revenues for our communities, which are desperate to get that as well. So there's that fine balance between, keeping public safety, but also trying to help generate and really kickstart the economy in our area as well. I think you'll see restaurants that are putting up heaters so that they can capitalize as much of the season as they can into as late of the season as they can. I think we've got a tremendous opportunity with 8 million people in the Chicagoland area. Again, we're not saying if you're sick, come out here. But what we are saying is if you're well and you follow the pledge, like this is what DuPage is doing for you, but we're also asking for you to do the same for us to keep our staff, our workers healthy. I think there's an opportunity to help generate in partnership with the business community and the opportunity for that. And I think that's where the three of us all got together because we want to make sure it's at the blessing of the health department as well. I think from a Choose DuPage perspective, our differential is that you don't have to wait, 5 minutes on an elevator with 16 of your best friends to the 17th floor or the 20th floor. So we were trying to have that messaging be unified, and it's more that than it is, hey, come on out to DuPage. And we hope that our hotels will see a little bit of uptick with that, but it's really, again, to help kickstart the economy.
Thank you. And I know one of the things I wanted to say, Sharon, was how much we want our businesses to do well and to stay in business and to succeed here in Waterville. And I think the best way to do that, obviously, is to beat the disease and to do what we can to stop the spread. So I just wondered if you wanted to talk at all about your hotel or the measures that you're taking.
Absolutely. The Hyatt has joined Marriott in enforcing the facial covering guidelines. So we're making sure that all of our guests are using their masks, and that's in all public areas. If they do not have it, we supply them with it. In regards to the team here, we do have a daily screening temperature checks and making sure that you are not sick when you are at work. We've been through already 2 associates testing positive, and we are very, very grateful that we followed all of the protocols and they are both back to work and healthy. So, this whole thing has been a very, really challenging experience for all of us, for our guests and for the team. But we're, following the health guidelines and just making sure that we can continue to operate, but operate safely.
Thank you very much for that. All right, let's go on to Alderman Crushel.
No questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Widener?
Yeah, thank you. Certainly I understand your dire circumstance, Beth, and your dire circumstance is probably all of our, issue to address. So thank you for what you're doing. I just liked what you were saying about the unified messaging that you were doing, but you seemed to say that there was no unified protocols established with all the hotels in DuPage County from one to another. And I know that's been a major criticism nationally, is that we don't have consistent protocols going across the board. And I just wondered if you could share with us if there's been any conversation or if there's any drive to making sure that the safety protocols we enact in DuPage County are the same from one hotel to another.
I'm sorry, Alderman Widener, there was a lot of noise during your comments. Whoever is caller 6, I think the noise is coming from you. If you could mute yourself, we'd appreciate that. Beth, were you able to hear Alderman Widener?
I was. Thank you. So on Thursday, we have the DuPage County Health Department is doing a presentation to all of our hotels. It is challenging when you have messages coming from different sources. So for example, a guest who flies in from Missouri to O'Hare and then comes out to one of the DuPage County hotels, the staff is a little confused as to what, they're certainly providing their protocols, but the guests may be even asking them, do I have to wear a mask? What do I have to do when I come out onto the 9th floor? Are you going to enforce this? I mean, there's a lot of questions these hotels are getting, and I'm sure Sharon can speak to this more effectively. But we are hoping it is the different brands, but I think the brands are still getting more unified in the protocols. And I think it's more about the different states and then coming to an area and then not knowing what to expect. So I think that's where having that information on our COVID resource page is really important as they get ahead. Signage in the hotels is very important. And I think, again, Sharon, maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
Yes, absolutely. I do know that are you guys hearing an echo, or is it just, okay, I'm going to try to step back a little bit.
We can hear you.
Okay, so Hyatt and Marriott have fairly similar protocols and safety standards. So it's basically making sure that all guests are following basically the local guidelines, which is if the DuPage is enforcing the mask wearing, that's what the hotels are doing. So that's where we go to is basically the DuPage site to make sure that we are following all of those guidelines. So that's where I think we are unified as a county. Signage, unfortunately, is a little bit different. It depends on the brand. So if you are Marriott, you'll have the Marriott signage. Hyatt, whatever that brand is telling you to do is what you have to do.
Yep. I think information is really key. So I think having the county health department really come and do a unified overall umbrella messaging to all of our hotels will be really helpful. We have everybody invited to that too. It's not just hotels, it's the attractions. I have hotels that'll tell me a bigger hotel, I can't enforce it on the 9th floor. Well, I get it, you're short staffed, but we can certainly ask that the guests wear the mask in public areas like Sharon said. So I think, our hotels are working really hard to make sure everyone is as safe as possible.
Thank you. I think DuPage County the health department has established some really good protocols, and I think that shows in the number of cases and the number of deaths that we've had in DuPage County. And I just hope that the leadership continues on in as much as possible, having a unified approach on our messaging. I think is important moving forward. So take that as you may. The other question I have for you is there's a large 300-acre outdoor adventure park that opened up in Lamont.
Lamont.
And, I know you're struggling for business. I don't know if your outreach extends that far or not, but I just thought I'd mention it. It might be a potential for customers and for people to come and to enjoy DuPage. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, we'll move on to Alderman Wilson.
No comment.
Okay, thank you. This was an informational only item, so thank you very much, Beth and Sharon. But there's no need for a motion, and we appreciate you coming to our meeting.
Thank you very much for your time. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you.
Okay, we will move on to the next item of business. The consideration of recommendations for the City Council adoption, the modified work and confined space safety policies, which shall be effective immediately. I'll go to Assistant City Administrator White to present.
Thank you, Chair Goodman. The Safety Committee has been working on a variety of policy updates for the safety manual for the better part of about a year now. So the policies included tonight for review are the modified work and confined space policies. Modified work establishes more formally the city's light duty policies, which allow for temporary and alternative work assignments when an employee is on a work-related injury. So this would allow them to come back to work in a limited capacity while they're seeking treatment and recovery. The confined space policy addresses some safe practices and procedures for entry into confined spaces, which predominantly impacts public works. There are some state and federal requirements related to the regulation of safety for that type of an activity, and the Safety Committee worked closely with public works staff to get input on that policy to make sure that it was compliant with what they are currently doing, as well as improving their safety procedures and protocols. So I will take any questions that anyone may have about those policies.
Thank you very much. We'll go through everyone who's present and ask for comments. Alderman Ashour.
No comments.
Thank you. Alderman Berry.
No comment.
Thank you. Alderman Bevere.
No comment.
Thank you. Alderman Zavalos.
No comment at this time.
Thank you. I had one minor question, which was on the light duty policy. Under restrictions, it talks about the wearing of the department uniform by sworn personnel. I just wondered if this was in any way something that needed to be broadened to be a little bit more general about all uniforms that city employees or contractors might be wearing, or other gear or masks or safety equipment or anything of that nature.
Give me one moment. I'm just reading through the section. Yes, that should be amended to say the wearing of department uniform by personnel shall be at the discretion of the department head. We will make that change.
Okay, thank you. Alderman Kerschel.
No comment, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Widener.
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
No comments.
We will move on and ask for a motion on this item. Would anyone like to make the motion?
Alderman Wilson will recommend the City Council adopt the Safety Committee's modified work and confined space policies effective immediately.
Alderman Widener seconds.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second, and we need a roll call vote, clerk.
Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Widener?
Aye.
Alderman Crucial?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ashar?
Aye.
Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Bevere?
Aye.
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries. We'll move on to item number 3. This is going to be the consideration of the Omnia Partners Agreement with U.S. Train Incorporated for installation of an engineered makeup air system within the Public Works Department garage. And I'd like to note at the outset, Deputy Director Kukler's earlier email to the council about a slight change to the motion that we will need on this item. But please go ahead, Deputy Director Kukler.
Thank you and good evening. Staff has started contemplating this engineered makeup air system during the last budget process, and we decided to not include the construction of the budget this year because we wanted to investigate further what the right solution would be during this fiscal year, with the intent of including construction in next fiscal year's budget. Recently, with the approval of the IGA with DuPage County for the CARES Act funding, it became evident there's an opportunity to move this project forward and be reimbursed at least partially by that CARES Act funding, even though this project was not included in the budget. We did obtain a cost estimate with an approach to deal with the makeup air in the Public Works garage area. In that area, that's where all the vehicles are at. It's the largest part of the building. It actually affects when a lot of vehicles start up in the morning before the garage doors open up. It affects the air quality, not just in that area, but also within the office area at times too, where you can smell some of the exhaust getting in here. So, in analyzing it, the exhaust fans we have existing don't evacuate the air out of the polluted air out of the garage area fast enough and replenish it with outside air. So Train looked at this for us back in, I think, February, and gave a real kind of a ballpark estimate as to what it would cost. And then as in the last few weeks, as we started looking at the CARES Act funding as a potential source of money to pay for this, we had them look at it again. And a couple of conditions of the CARES Act money is we have to have this project constructed and paid for by the end of this calendar year. So Train came out last Monday, so a week ago, to look at the project with their subcontractors and just to verify that they were confident they could have this project completed in the time necessary. And the date we have in the contract is December 15th. That would allow us to verify that construction is complete and also pay them for the work before the end of the calendar year. Similar to the police department HVAC project, which we're using Train for, this pricing is low bid pricing that Train submitted as part of their involvement in the Omnia Partners purchasing cooperative. So Train had a project where they provided as part of a low bid all of their pricing for their equipment, and so this pricing is already low bid pricing, and staff's recommending waiving competitive bidding to award this contract to Train at this time. I think that's about it. I do have, as Alderman Goodman noted, the dollar amount in the motion that's included in the summary changed, so I'd emailed council late this afternoon with the updated dollar amount, so it's consistent with what the actual contract is. It changed from, I think, $218,000 to $218,981. So not a big change, but I want to make sure that whoever makes the motion makes the correct motion. And at this point, I'd be happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you. And I would note that the material that was in the backup did have the correct amount listed, the $218,981. So the motion just didn't match the backup, I believe.
Correct.
All right. Are there any questions or comments? Alderman Ashour.
Just what percentage is the payback if we get it done this year?
As far as I know, it should be 100%. John might be able to answer that question better as he's been involved with the CARES Act agreement.
Administrator Copeland.
Thank you. From everything that we know at this point, it should be, Phil's correct, it should be 100% reimbursable. That's why we're bringing it forward. It sounded like in the, Phil, in your comments, it sounded like it was a percentage. We believe it's 100% reimbursable, and there will be in excess of $680,000, as you saw in the intergovernmental agreement with the county, that will be available for Warrenville if we have sufficient receipts. There's a variety of things that can meet that, but this certainly should, and it isn't just something we came up with for, well, this is a terrible term, but for fun. It's a gross exaggeration of the term, but it is something that will be necessary for the well-being in the garage. So it seemed like a very good fit, and it goes right along with a lot of the systems the county has done under that funding at their own facilities, at the jail, at the health department, center, et cetera. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
I have a question.
All right. We'll get to
sorry.
you, Alderman Wilson. Alderman Berry.
I think this is a very good idea. I'm glad that we're finally doing something for Public Works, the safety of all the people that are employed over in that building, because the inhaling of that air, that poisonous air, is not good. So I'm glad we're doing something for them. Great, thank you.
Alderman Goodman, I think you're muted.
Alderman Revere.
No comment.
Thank you. Alderman Zavalos.
Yes, I agree with Alderman Berry. I think it's a great idea, not just for the toxic fumes, but this is just a good idea in general during COVID. To get air exchange more efficiently and faster and better. I mean, this is what the schools are all trying to do too. So even though it's not the same thing, I'm very much in favor. Just a question to City Administrator Coakley. So if this is paid 100%, we don't have at this point other plans for that money that will be allocated to us from the CARES Act funding. I mean, I think it's a good idea, but I don't know all the big picture that we have for this funding. Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Zavalos. Go ahead, Administrator Copeland.
Thank you. Some of we're still working on a lot of the details, Alderman. The items that we already have compiled, all of the commodities that we had to purchase, additional hand sanitizer, masks, the screens that were put up, the barriers at the different counters, a number of other things that were actual hard costs will be reimbursable. That's only in the, I'm going to have the number wrong, but $30-some thousand range. But there are some other things that should be reimbursable in addition to this. There's some amount of public safety employees versus police. If we had fire, that would be included. That's a whole different thing because we have a district that should be reimbursable. That's a little bit more nebulous into how we can go about that. So for my goals, first of all, is to make sure that we get all the money that's been allocated. That's what it was intended by the Congress. That's what it was intended by the county. So we want to make sure we don't leave that on the table and have to return it to Washington at the end. Secondly, is to make sure that the things that we submit, and I'm working very closely with the finance director and all of our staff, are able to pass the somewhat flexible guidelines that are given on that use of that money. It may or may not. It might be audited in the future. I find it hard to believe that they will audit some 100,000 local governments across the country, but who knows? Some may be randomly targeted or picked, selected, I should say. But anyway, we want to make sure that the things we submit are, will pass those tests. And when I say selected, I mean there are random audits that go on all the time with the IRS, businesses, governments are sometimes scrutinized for MFT money and like that. So hope that answers the question.
That answers your question, Alderman Davila? Okay.
Yes, that does. Thanks.
Thank you. Great. My question is also for Administrator Coakley or possibly Finance Director Dahlstrand. Do we need a budget amendment for this?
Sorry. Who wants to answer? John or you want?
Kevin, I was waiting for you if you want to start.
Because the item was not budgeted, which helps our ability to even apply for this, we may need a budget amendment as we reach the end of the year. It's likely we will at this point, but it's hard to say for certain. As you recall, budget amendments are done at the fund level. So we'll have to see as we get nearer to the end of the year. If it does, it'll be an amendment we propose toward the end of the year before the fiscal year is finalized.
Okay, thank you. Let us know about that then. Alderman Kerschel.
Thank you. I had two things to add. One is, so I'm totally in agreement with this. That's a really good idea. I guess my only concern is I don't really understand how that actually falls into the CARES Act as far as air filtration. I mean, I guess it does. And if you're confident 100% that it does, I'm okay with it. Do we have some sort of documentation or written correspondence or something that we know that that's covered?
Administrator Coakley?
We do not have any guarantees at this point. We're continuing to work on that. There is some interpretation in the guidelines that we've received. It certainly appears that it is covered. We will work to verify that. So I think what you're referring to is we don't want to spend the money, find out later that it wasn't reimbursable. We believe based on the review of that agreement that it is. Before we go ahead and do that, we will work to get better clarification on it. Everything until those agreements were done about within the last 10 days has been back and forth and not completely clear. But these do seem, our interpretation is they are, so you can have that assurance, or we would not have put it on the council agenda or for the committee at all. But we will work to get better verification before we move ahead. But there's a time element here. The expenditures need to be made before the end of the fiscal year, the end of the calendar year, December 30th, and we need to get the reimbursement request in before that. So we've got to keep moving along as we work to dot all the I's and cross all the T's.
Okay. And then my question would be, so there was a budget item for this year's budget for the design of this solution, but not for the actual the purchase. So is the design included in this 218,000, or is that we would still be using that budget line item?
Yeah. Director Kukler.
The design is included in the $218,000. So when we did the police department HVAC system, originally we asked for permission, I think, to move forward with just the design. It was something like $7,000 for that system. And then if we proceed, which we are proceeding with them in the police department one eventually, that $7,000 was incorporated into the overall cost of the project. So we didn't pay it out separately. I would anticipate that this would be probably a $5,000 to $7,000 design charge too, which I'd have to get confirmation from Trane exactly how much it is, but that would be, my understanding is because it was budgeted, it was included in our budget, that portion of the cost would still have to be paid by the city. But then the remainder would be paid, reimbursed by the CARES Act.
Okay, so the CARES Act would not include the design is, I guess, what my question, correct?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay, that's it, thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Weidner.
Thank you. Phil, as you stated in your memo, the air quality enhancement is important for the safety and health of the employees. And I just want to ask, is this system the best system we can find? And does it offer the best air exchange and air filtration system for our employees that's out there?
I don't know if it meets the requirements that are required for that sized area. What the system we have in now, the current requirements, I should say. I don't know if the exhaust fans are out there now met the requirements 20 years ago when the building was built. But this is train and our facilities maintenance supervisor looked at the area and determined based on current requirements that this is the system that's needed to evacuate the air appropriately and quickly enough, and then replenish it with fresh air from the outside. And I also would like to point out, it's not just the exhaust fumes, but part of the reason I think this fits with the CARES Act funding is, I mean, turning over the air within the buildings is important to get the air that people are breathing out and refreshed with fresh air. I think part of the problem with some of the indoor spaces and office spaces and garages and that is that the air doesn't turn over quickly enough. So if you've got people in there breathing that might be infected, then it's more likely, I think, that people would be could get infected from a fellow employee or somebody else in the work area. So I think that that's part of the reason with turning over the air it fits into the CARES Act funding well. But yeah, this is the train has very good equipment. It's the equipment that our facilities maintenance supervisor recommends, and using them to design this and base this on the actual amount of airspace and volume in there to get that air turned over was important.
So if there is any kind of rating to make sure that we're getting the top shelf air exchange system, and if there's a need for any kind of additional equipment in order to, make this the very best it can be, I just think it would be important to investigate that at this, considering the current environmental conditions. I just want to make sure that we're getting the very, very best as far as, getting an air exchange system for our employees. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Wilson.
My questions have been answered.
Oh, that's wonderful. All right. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I can make that motion, Alderman Davalos. I'd like to make a motion to recommend the City Council pass a resolution approving a contract in the amount of $218,918 with Train United States Incorporated for the design and installation of the Warrenville Garage MUA system.
I believe you meant $981.
I miswrote it down as 918. Sorry. So whatever it is it 981? Okay, I make that motion.
Second, Alderman Ashour.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Clerk, can we have the roll?
Alderman Crucial?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Revere?
Aye.
Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Alderman Weidner?
Aye.
Alderman Ashour?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. All right, that finishes item number 3. Move on to item number 4, which is the consideration of a community relations task force in order to develop the purpose, mission, and structure of a new community relations advisory commission. We will go to Mayor Brummel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You have the information description in your backup. I'd like to share that with the public right now. In 2015, with the approval of the city's strategic plan, the City Council adopted a diversity goal to create a culture that is inclusive of all residents of the community. I'm recommending establishing a task force comprised of individuals with relevant expertise and experience who can provide input and the guidance to the city on the formation of a community relations commission. This proposed commission would then serve as an advisory capacity to the city council on matters of inclusion, diversity, and equality. The proposed commission would expand upon the strategic plan diversity goal, helping the city make additional progress towards diversity, inclusiveness, and equality within the community. The proposed task force would have a limited purpose, authorized through December 31st, 2020, to complete its goals. Included in the agenda backup is also an outline of the task force activities. So there you have the idea. I'd be willing to answer any questions if anyone has them.
Thank you very much. I'll go first to Alderman Ashour.
No questions at this time.
Thanks, Alderman Berry.
No questions. I think this is a very good idea.
Thank you, Alderman Bevere.
No questions at this time.
Okay, Alderman Davalos.
No questions, but I think this is great that we're working on this strategic initiative from our strategic plan.
Thank you. My only comment is to wholeheartedly agree with Alderman Berry and Davalos. I think this is something that's important and that we can make some more progress on, hopefully, as this process goes forward. Thank you. Alderman Krischel.
No questions, thank you.
All right, Alderman Widener.
No questions. I wholeheartedly support this motion and will endorse all of its activities. Thank you.
Great. Alderman Wilson.
No comment.
All right, thank you. Would anyone like to make the motion?
Alderman
Widener will make a motion recommending the city council establish a community relations task force through December 31st, 2020, authorized to assist in creating a community relations commission.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. Let's have a roll call vote.
Alderman Ashour? Alderman Ashour? Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Widener?
Aye.
Alderman Bevere?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Alderman Krischel?
Aye.
Alderman Ashour?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you. And now we'll move ahead with the next item, which is related to this. I understand that Alderman Widener has agreed to serve, so we can fill in the blank on that one. Again, Mayor Brummel.
That's exactly what I was going to share, so thank you. I would be happy to serve as the chair and would be delighted to have Alderman Widener help establish the task force. He originally came up with this idea, so I appreciate the fact that we had the chance to talk about it, and it looks like it's going to happen. So thank you, Alderman Widener, for the idea, and also thank you for following up and helping with making it a reality, hopefully.
Thank you. Any comments, Alderman Widener?
No comments. I'm just really pleased that we're forming this committee. Even though I said no comments, I guess I do have that to make. I think it can only make the community stronger and help create equity across the board in our fine little community. Thank you.
Okay, I will go through the roll again to ask for questions or comments. Alderman Ashour.
No questions or comments.
Alderman Berry.
No question, but one comment. Very good job, Alderman Wagner.
Yes, thank you. Alderman Bevere.
No comment.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos.
No comment, but thank you, Alderman Widener, for volunteering.
Thanks. I have no additional remarks. Alderman Kerschel.
No comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Widener.
No additional comments. Thank you.
And Alderman Wilson.
I have no comments, so therefore I'd like to recommend the City Council appoint Mayor Brummel as Chair of the Community Relations Task Force and Alderman Wagner as the Council Liaison, both terms expiring December 31st, 2020.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have the roll call?
Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Widener?
Aye.
Alderman Kerschel?
Aye.
Alderman Bevere?
Aye.
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Alderman Ashour?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. That finishes that item. We'll move on to item number 6. It is the discussion of the fiscal year 2020 hotel tax funding for the grant program and the aesthetic enhancement program. We'll go to Assistant City Administrator White.
Thank you again, Chair Goodman. As we heard last week from Finance Director Dahlstrom and City Administrator Coakley, we are anticipating continued declines in revenues related to COVID-19 and its impacts, including the hotel tax fund. Staff continues to regularly evaluate our expenses and look for possible opportunities to reduce the expenses that we have in all of our funds to ensure that we can maintain service for the community this year and going into fiscal year 22. The hotel tax fund, among other things, provides the revenues for the hotel tax grant program that allows for events and programs within the community to occur with assistance from that fund. Over the last few years, we have traditionally budgeted $150,000 for that hotel tax grant program that is administered by the Tourism and Arts Commission. In addition, we have, based on previous discussions, the council has authorized $60,000 in every even numbered year for the aesthetic enhancement program, also out of that hotel tax fund, which is, again, a total of $210,000. So you may be asking why we're having this conversation now versus at the budget meetings like we normally do for any budget-related discussions. And the answer to that is that in August, TAC will kick off its grant program with our informational workshop that's scheduled for August 13th. And that is an opportunity for potential applicants of the hotel grant program to come in and ask questions of TAC and get information related to the upcoming year's program, followed up with their applications beginning in September. Those applications are due, and TAC begins to review the applications over the months of September through December for an eventual recommendation to the council in January. So we have already we've already gotten questions from some of those repeat applicants about where things stand with the fiscal year 22 funding for the hotel grant program so that they can apply based on that information and also consider other alternate sources of funding if that is something that they need to do. The current projections, as we saw last week, looks like we're looking at a loss of 46% or approximately $200,000 from the hotel tax fund. I'll reiterate what Finance Director Dahlstrom and City Administrator Coakley said last week, which is those numbers continue to change. Those are our best projections right now with the limited actual data that we have over the first couple of months of the fiscal year. But as you heard from the DCBB representatives this evening, they are anticipating continued issues with hotel stays as a result of COVID and public confidence in travel. Therefore, staff is requesting direction from the City Council on both of the programs for fiscal year 22. In the backup for this packet, there is a memo from me outlining some options to reduce the hotel tax expenses for fiscal year 22. All three options recommend suspending the aesthetic enhancement program. The reason being is that TAC has already successfully installed 2 different public art projects over the last few years. And their next project, they were hoping to tie in with the Illinois Prairie Path project, but that has also been delayed due to lack of funding and other concerns. And so at this point, we consider the program to be discretionary and have some extra time to fiscal year 24 in order to look at what we can do with the Illinois Prairie Path project, and hopefully we can include a public art element with that project around that time. The option 1 in the packet is what staff and the Tourism Arts Commission is recommending, which also includes a reduction of the hotel grant program funding from $150,000, which is what's been budgeted in the last few years, to $100,000. That will likely require TAC to do some cuts on the requested applicants' budgets for upcoming events and programs. But there's also likelihood that some of the events for fiscal year 22 may not be able to be held or may have to be reduced just as a result of the ongoing COVID-19 concern. So this would still allow for the tax program to provide, or the hotel tax grant program to provide funding for ongoing events every year, and the programs like the WIB beautification efforts, which again heavily rely on tax funding and grant funding for their activities. We are expecting this year some of the expenses in the hotel tax fund. We expect there to be some savings. So we know that 4th of July was canceled this year. Summer days was canceled. So it is likely that we will see some savings there, but with the ongoing concerns of the revenues for the hotel tax fund, we do want to make sure that we can appropriately fund this program and other programs that rely on that money every year for the next few years. And so with all the uncertainty around the hotel stays and public confidence in travel, we think it's the right thing to do to be conservative and responsible with the funding for fiscal year 22 and cut back where we can. Finally, the hotel tax fund also includes grants that are outside of what the Tourism and Arts Commission manages, and those again include summer days and 4th of July funding and the Warren Tavern. Those are not included in this recommendation, but staff may end up coming back with a recommendation on those programs as we gather more information in the coming months. And I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate the presentation. Let's go to Alderman for questions and comments. Alderman Ashour.
Thanks for the report. I have no questions.
Thank you, Alderman Berry. Can you hear me, Alderman Berry?
Got it. Yes, when we had our meeting last week, I think there's quite a few people who did receive their grants this year that either are not going to be using them or are using a very limited amount of the amount granted. So I know that if Christina could back me up here, I think she said that CoffeeCon had decided to not hold their event this year. If I'm not mistaken, that was said. And so there will be some savings this year also from the amounts that were granted. Also, this reminds me of 2008, 2009, 2010, when we did reduce the amount to $100,000. We were in difficult times during those years. And we got along just fine with that amount. And sometimes we didn't even have requests for the full $100,000. So I'm sure things will be different next year too. We'll see what happens. Like Christina said, the workshop will be this August, and I guess we'll have a better idea of who's interested in going for a grant this year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Alderman Bevere.
No comment at this time.
All right, Alderman Davalos.
Yes, I'm fine with reducing the grant program, and I'll vote yes for this. I'm very sad about the aesthetic enhancement not going forward, but considering everything that's going on, it's probably the right decision. But I just hope as we go forward and monies become available that we'll continue to be big supporters of this these art pieces, because I think they're wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to say that I appreciate TAC's thoughtfulness in considering this recommendation. I think getting their input is very important. We know that, as Alderman very wisely said, we've had to deal with this before during tough economic times and cut back the program, but I think it's been important that we never eliminated it entirely. We can adjust the total funding as our availability to pay for these events and arts programs allows, but especially in tough times like this, the public is going to look forward to having events to come together again next year and in future times when gathering is more available and safer. I would say it worries me to be cutting the arts and to cutting back purchasing the aesthetic enhancement program at a time when I know that artists are probably having a very difficult time selling their work and having a very difficult time finding funding for performances or other types of artists, both musical and so on, that are generally funded by these grants. So I hope that going forward we're able to increase this funding back to where it was. Thank you. That's all. Alderman Grisham.
I agree with this recommendation. And looking at the three options, I think that one is the one that makes the most sense. And so I will be voting to agree with this. Thank you.
Thanks. Alderman Widener.
Yeah, I just have a question regarding the aesthetic enhancement program. What was the reason that you suggested total elimination of that program for 2022?
So the reasoning behind suspending the program, and just to be clear, both staff and TAC are not recommending that we eliminate the program altogether, just suspend for fiscal year 22 and pick it back up in fiscal year 24 as scheduled. The reasoning behind that was right now there is not a project that TAC has been currently working on for fiscal year 22. As I said, they were hoping to tie it into the Illinois Prairie Path project, but that seems to also be delayed at this point. So they simply just don't have an alternative placement or project planned at this time. And with it being a more discretionary program, it was thought that that would be the most reasonable approach to take given the current financial situation.
Thank you. I guess, I'm really, disappointed in that in some way we couldn't change gears and switch to some other type of artistic and creative endeavor, since it's such an essential piece of our community. And Warrenville has for a long time been identified because of its support of artists and artwork within the community. I certainly hope that the wording can be changed to say temporarily suspend, but in the day and age where social distancing is occurring, it just seems like a public-centered art piece would meet the criteria where, you know, something could be presented and utilized out of the hotel and tax money that would avoid the social distancing problems that occur with large group activities and things. I don't know if you can revisit this with TAC, but it just seems like, you know, something ought to be continued to be given back to the community. I understand that, you know, after hearing Beth Marchetti's report that we're in a dire circumstance and need to reduce the funding, but I think artwork is essential in the community, and you know, maybe in the coming year, social events would be the one that you would totally eliminate in favor of having some kind of central artwork, you know, created recognizing the times. Although, you know, I know that we need to, you know, come close to zero funding things, because I think it was in the Tribune this morning, they were saying up to 8,000 hotels may go under during this period of time. So those are my thoughts on the matter. I don't necessarily support the elimination of the aesthetic enhancement program, because I think that could go on, whereas the group gatherings, because of health reasons, definitely need to be eliminated. Thank you.
All right, Assistant City Administrator White, did you want to answer any of that question?
I would just say that I think TAC is equally sad at the idea of not having a program or a project to present for fiscal year 22. Certainly if the council wants to keep the aesthetic enhancement program, they will find an alternative solution to the Prairie Path project, and we'll look into something different. But the thinking again was, given the just so much uncertainty with what's going to happen with the hotel tax fund and what the revenue losses will be as we continue into this year and heading into fiscal year 22, they thought this was the most responsible approach to take. Also, with that said, we have some time between now and January when the proposals are presented for the grant program, as well as when we start really talking about the budget for fiscal year 22. Should something drastically change between now and then, this is always something that can be revisited at a later time.
Yes, I think that's an excellent point. And I would also say that, you know, adding temporarily to the motion, I don't think would change the meaning of the motion. If whoever makes the motion wants to make that addition, that would be fine. But is that all right with staff?
No objection for me.
Okay. Alderman Wilson.
No objection. No objection.
Thank you. Would someone like to make the motion?
Alderman Berry, I'll make the motion. I'd like to recommend the City Council direct staff to include $100,000 for the hotel tax grant program and temporarily suspend funding for the aesthetic enhancement program in the FY 2022 proposed budget.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Can we have a roll call, please?
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Alderman Ekshar?
Aye.
Alderman Christian?
Aye.
Alderman Widener?
Nay.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Bavir?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you. We now move on to item number 7, the consideration of the remote work policy revision. again, City Administrator, Assistant City Administrator.
Thank you. In your packet is a copy of the policy that we're recommending this evening. The city already has a policy in its personnel manual called the telecommuting policy, which follows very similarly along with this policy. However, we've learned some things over the last few months handling COVID and having to work remotely for a few months. There were some things that we decided because of that it made sense to amend our policy to be a little bit more specific about the types of arrangements that made sense from a remote work standpoint, and while still meeting city service obligations and the operations of the city. Some of those included restricting the remote work to exempt only employees, limiting how much of an employee's regular work schedule can be remote, and also including some additional eligibility details that talk about the job responsibilities and the employee suitability for a remote work assignment. Ultimately, the use of remote work over the last few months with COVID allowed the city to continue to provide services and operations while we were closed, while the building itself was closed to the public, with, I think, minimal disruption and minimal complaints, actually no complaints from the public that I'm aware of. So we were able to continue those services, which was very helpful. This policy, though, is intended to be another long-term policy that would go into our personnel manual. It is not intended specifically to address COVID and COVID-19 related issues or any other emergency situation. In those specific situations, if we had another emergency or if we saw a need to revert back phases because of COVID, I think the city administrator would still likely potentially look at making remote work more flexible than this policy allows in a short-term temporary environment under an emergency circumstance. But this policy is intended to address remote work under normal circumstances going forward. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Are there comments or questions from the council? Alderman Ashour.
No comments or questions.
Alderman Berry.
No comments, no questions.
Alderman Bevere.
No questions.
Alderman Davalos.
No questions, but I think this is timely, and thanks for all the work that went in. This is a result of the circumstances, so thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions. I believe what you said was you wanted to, going forward, make this policy only available to exempt employees and limit the amount of the work schedule. Was the work from home during the building closure only limited to exempt employees?
No, we were allowing during the COVID closure to have hourly employees working remotely if their positions allowed it based on the department head and supervisor feedback. If they could do a substantial portion of their job remotely, we did allow hourly employees to do that. However, most of our hourly employees tend to have a lot more responsibility that involves interaction with customers at the counter or answering phones at the front desk of the city, for lack of a better phrase. So it was felt that from that standpoint, a longer term remote work assignment wouldn't really be ideal for our non-exempt hourly staff.
Okay, well, would that be something you already sort of cover with the part where it says the job responsibilities need to be appropriate for a remote working arrangement? I just sort of wonder why we also need to have the limitation only to exempt employees. Because, as you said, there were no complaints when the city went to more remote working. It seemed to work out fairly well.
I'm going to defer to City Administrator Coakley to provide a response to that.
Thank you. A couple of things. Number one, this is a policy that's written intentionally to be more conservative so that we can develop it as we get our feet under us and get more experience with it. No, that's absolutely correct that we have some experience, more so by far than we had before this whole pandemic. This is the longer term view is in some ways very different from the emergency situation that we were facing. The pandemic, while government workers were considered essential workers and we did not have to allow anyone to work remotely. It just made sense for health reasons, for our employees' health, for their families, for our customers, for our residents. It made sense to send everyone away to work remotely and do our absolute best to keep everything going. That said, it was very difficult in certain circumstances to keep some of the hourly workers as, for lack of a better term, busy as we wanted to. We believe everybody was being as productive as they could be. Some were very, very productive, probably more so than they even would be in the office because there were no interruptions from the counter or the phones, et cetera. But in other cases, the access to files, coworkers, those interactions were just lacking. And certain positions just can't be as productive as they can be within the office environment itself. That's why there's some case-by-case review, even for exempt workers. It's also, frankly, very difficult, and we trust our employees, they wouldn't be here if we didn't, but to keep track of hours. And then actually my biggest concern is that they would be working beyond the 40 hours a week, which means we have an overtime requirement to pay them. There's language in the FLSA laws that say if we're requiring to work that long, and I'm not going to get the right language in there, but we are obligated to pay them overtime, even if we didn't authorize it in advance. So there's some other things that go there, and right now I'm not completely comfortable with having the hourly workers. Also should note there's only a handful of hourly office workers that this would apply to. Certainly our administrative assistants, our records clerks, evidence tax notes. Most of our hourly workers are police officers, CSOs, and public works employees, which by the very nature of their jobs, by and large, can't be done remotely. I don't mean to be Captain Obvious with that statement, but that's the vast majority of our employees and the vast majority of our hourly employees anyway. So we're talking about some of the office folks. In the future, we can consider those things, but it's a lot to manage long term. We did what we had to do during the pandemic, and we made it work. As I think everybody in this country and this area did, we made it work the best that we could, but it wasn't always ideal. So going forward, we're looking at having a narrowed focus on it to start with, and it can be expanded.
Okay, my second question just has to do with consistency of the policy. On the front, it says typically remote work will not exceed 20% of the work schedule, but on the second page, it says at least 50% of all job functions must be able to be completed remotely. I just wonder if you mean 50% of the types of activities as opposed to 50% of the time. If there's some way to distinguish those two things or make that a little bit clearer, that maybe you're just talking about the types of things they need to do. Otherwise, why have numbers that don't match? It just seems a little confusing.
Right. So the 20% of the work schedule is relating to how much time in a general work week or work month that can be spent working remotely. The 50% of all job functions is intended to make sure that in order to be eligible for a remote work assignment, you must be able to do at least 50% of your regular job not needing to be on city property. So it has more to do with the functionality and the tasks that you're assigned and what's part of your regular work, and whether you can do really a majority of your work from any location versus being, as City Administrator Coakley said, versus being needed on site to either help customers or because that's where file access is or any of those things. So that's where the difference in the 20 and 50% come in. We can tweak the language slightly to make it a little bit more clear if it's not clear.
Yeah, that might help. I think one example that came to mind, and I know this position isn't going to exist, but it's just a lead van driver where, one day a week they might be driving a van, and that day is going to look totally different than the other days on their schedule. And there may be other job functions like that, either for current employees or in the future, where just because you might need to be in one location on a particular day doesn't mean you need to be on city property 50% of the time, or whatever the case might be. Just to make it a little bit more open for case-by-case analysis. Thank you. I'm done with my questions, and we need to go to Alderman Kershaw.
Thank you. Just for clarification, so this this policy would be in effect for after returning to normal work conditions. Like this is a say post-COVID policy. Is that correct?
Not necessarily. The way that it's intended right now would make it effective as soon as the council approves it. The use of it and how we administer it would be dependent on the department heads and the case-by-case situation. As of right now, most of our employees have returned back to work on site full-time unless there is a special circumstance, and we do have a couple that are COVID-related that have, that are working remotely because of a COVID-related special circumstance. But there isn't, at this point, there isn't an intent to wait until COVID is over to apply this policy if there's a case-by-case situation that this could apply and the department head is comfortable with doing that and the employee can do their work remotely.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess my only question would be, you know, outside of a health risk or pandemic like we're in now, just curious what the benefit is to have folks working remotely in a normal working environment. That's my only question.
Sure. So this has come up quite a bit over the last few years. The original policy was approved as a mechanism to facilitate some flexibility in operations and in work schedules. So where you see it come into play a lot is either with employees that may have a longer commute to and from the city, and for a variety of reasons, it might be beneficial to them to lessen that burden of a longer commute. It helps with retention of employees that are currently in place. It helps with some recruiting efforts. This is a topic and an issue that has come up frequently over the last 4 years, 5 years with every employee that we've hired in terms of some sort of flexible schedules. And it's not always a clean remote work request, like I want to work from home 1 day out of the 5. Sometimes it's, can I look at different hours and do maybe 10 to 6 instead of 8 to 5 for a variety of reasons. So there's some benefits to it from the employee's perspective, from the city's perspective and organization perspective. There is some evidence out there that remote work and flexible work schedules actually make for more productive, engaged employees as a benefit, if you will, that doesn't really cost the city any additional money because it's not changing their pay, so to speak. It's just changing the work environment that they're in. So that was the reason that the policy was originally put into place. With COVID, we did see a lot of employees working remotely, and it's come up again more regularly with the employees that have since returned. The explanation that they've given is just easier work-life balance, especially for some that may have children or may have caretaking responsibilities outside of their regular duties. That flexibility has helped them to be able to continue to perform their functions and also handle life's everyday requirements.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Welcome.
Alderman Wagner.
No questions or comments?
Alderman Wilson.
No comment.
I would entertain a motion.
Alderman Ashaw, recommend the city council adopt the revised remote work policy.
Second, Alderman.
Second, Alderman Davalos.
All right, take your pick on the second, clerk. We'd like a roll call, please.
Sorry about that. Alderman Beard? Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Wagner?
Aye.
Alderman Krischel?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Ashaw?
Aye.
Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Bevere?
Aye.
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We now move on to item number 8, which is the informational only update on the administration, finance, and police department fiscal year 2021 work plans and decision packages. This is just for everyone's information, but we'll go through to see if there are any comments or questions for staff about any of these plans. Alderman Ashour.
No comments or questions.
Thank you. Alderman Berry.
No questions.
Thank you. Alderman Bevere.
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Alderman Davalos.
No questions, thank you.
Thank you. I guess my question was just for the police department. Almost none of the items said anything as an update. There were, I think, 8 items out of 24 that said ongoing, but almost none had any notation. But am I to take it that that means that there's been no progress made on any of the other items?
Many of the things, Alderman, we had to basically put on hold because of this whole COVID issue. Right now, as a matter of fact, tonight, they're interviewing some candidates with the Board of Fire and Police Commission, so I could count, or I'd be able to update that once we get the status of that. So, but the other things, I'm not sure of exactly what you're referring to. But yeah, many of them have been put on hold because of this COVID thing.
I mean, what I'm referring to is just that I have a page of the tier 1 and tier 2 items, and they're all listed, and a couple of them say ongoing, and then the rest just don't say anything. So that's all I'm referring to. I think that doesn't include any of the tier 3 or proposed new items, but I think one of them said annually instead of ongoing. But, okay, that was just my question. Alderman Krischel?
No questions, thank you.
Alderman Widener?
No questions or comments. Thank you.
Alderman Wilson?
No comment.
Thank you. All right. Now we move on to item G1, the commendations, and we do have some. Would you like to present those, Chief Toronto?
We did get a couple of nice letters with commentary from citizens and also from the Bloomingdale Police Department for our assistance to them with a merit call out. And as always, we're appreciative of the work our officers do.
Yes, absolutely. There's a letter here from Joan Norman thanking the police officers, a letter from someone named Mark thanking all of our officers, and the one that you mentioned. That's all I have for today's agenda. I do need one more motion, however.
Alderman Krischel, I move to adjourn.
Second, Alderman Ashour.
Thank you, and a roll call vote.
Alderman Ashour?
Aye.
Alderman Berry?
Aye.
Alderman Bevere?
Aye.
Alderman Davalos?
Aye.
Alderman Goodman?
Aye.
Alderman Krischel?
Aye.
Alderman Widener?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Thanks everyone for your time. We are adjourned.
Thank you, Alderman Goodman.
Thank you.
Night, everyone.